Well, let the trumpet sound. Guys, I am excited to share a brand new way for you to connect with me and receive porn recovery support for all of my Finding Traction listeners. We are starting a brand new connection platform for listeners that kicks off this month. For $10 a month, you'll be able to join our Finding Traction community and get access to some great new ways of backfilling your recovery. On the last Sunday of each month, this month that will be March 31st, you will get a unique link to join a Zoom call where I'll be bringing a recovery topic and answering any recovery questions you have. You'll also get encouragement from being in a supportive recovery environment. Those groups are going to be at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, which is 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. In addition, for those who sign up, there will be a bonus in that I will be sending you the first 13 weeks of the video course, Finding Traction. And each quarter you remain in the group, you will receive the new quarter material that you can work through. We're not going to be doing coursework in these monthly meetings, but it will give you a format to frame your recovery around. Even better, of course, with a community of guys. So to sign up for our First Traction community group and get your link to join the first meeting at the end of this month, send me an email with the word in the subject line, community. My email is bandofbrothers.care@gmail.com. I'll respond with a PayPal link to sign you up. So once again, love to help tool up your recovery for a great porn-free, successful 2024. Now, on to the podcast. Have you ever heard of the term the Doldrums? Well, today I want to talk about that term and what happens when you have one of those meh days. I found that those days in particular present me with one of the biggest challenges to my recovery. We'll talk about that after the intro. Welcome aboard.
Ready?
When it comes to porn, are you stuck, spinning out, or slipping backwards in your life? If so, then welcome to the Finding Traction podcast, a show dedicated to those who are looking to gain recovery momentum away from porn and toward the life and relationships they have always hoped for. Now, here's your host, Vern Tomke.
Well, before we get into this term, let me just say that I am wanting to connect with guys. If you are looking for a safe group or just somebody to talk to in terms of moving away from the patterns of porn that have really dogged you in your life, again, love to connect with you. There's a video Finding Traction course that I've made to help guys like you. We also run groups of 5 to 7 guys that get together around that material. So if any of that interests you, or you just want to have a Zoom call with somebody and maybe find out the best steps forward, then give me a quick email at bandofbrothers.care@gmail.com. Well, let's go back to that term, doldrums. The term is actually based on a nautical idea that came from hundreds of years ago. Back when ships were powered pretty much by wind, like for most of history, you needed the wind to get around. I mean, sure, in the early days there was, rowing and oars, but eventually the ships got so big, like think of a Spanish galleon or something, that it was really wind or nothing. Now the term doldrums, and I know that you're taking careful notes with this, the term doldrums is a popular nautical term that refers to the belt around the Earth near the equator where sailing ships sometimes got stuck on windless waters. No wind at all. So they're stuck. They're just sitting there. Now, the reason for that, again, I know you're very interested, is the prevailing trade winds of the northern hemisphere blowed to the southwest, and they collided with the southern hemisphere's driving northwest trade winds. So both of these trade winds met. The result was the air simply moved in an upward direction and gave very little horizontal surface wind in this band near the equator. The result of all of that is you literally could be stuck for weeks, simply floating and going nowhere. As a result of this, you were stuck in the doldrums. Again, aren't you glad you've listened to this podcast? Now, the term the doldrums has quite a different meaning today. It refers to a feeling of being maybe sad or listless or bored or having no energy, enthusiasm, or momentum. You're just stuck. Kind of like that word meh, M-E-H, meh. So you could use that term. Maybe you've done it recently where you say, I don't know why, but I'm in the doldrums today. Let me approach this using numbers. Let's chart, for example, your daily level of engagement, excitement, energy, enthusiasm, any one of those things. And we're going to chart that on the numbers 1 to 9. So 1 is the very, very low end, and 9 is the very, very high end. You tracking with me here? And let me say, I'm a math teacher among other hats I wear, so I love working with numbers. So here we go. 1 is the low end, 9 is the high end. So let's break it up into 3 triplets. 1, 2, and 3 is like an Eeyore day. You're in the doldrums. 4, 5, and 6 are in the middle. Let's call it your Winnie the Pooh days. See how I just move back and forth with different word pictures here. So 4, 5, or 6 is in the middle. Just give me some honey, I'll be fine. You're just kind of somewhere in the middle. But 7, 8, and 9, those are the days you're rocking it. Those are your Tigger days. You're excited, you're energized, you got vigor and vim. So 1, 2, 3, Eeyore, 4, 5, 6, Winnie the Pooh, 7, 8, 9, Tigger. You got it? Okay. Now, I would also say that most of us maybe have different personalities or energy levels as to where we most commonly live at. I guess if you're more excitable, you might live more on average at the high end. Life is great more often than not. You're like Tony the Tiger. No, it's different kids thing, but you know where I'm going with that. Life is great. I don't even do that well. Okay, so that is guys that tend to live there. But then there's also guys that tend to live a fairly depressive lifestyle and would be at the lower end, on average. Myself, I tend to be somewhat of a flatliner. I, by and large, am a pretty modulated guy, kind of a steady Eddie. Most and the vast majority of my days are lived somewhere in the 4, 5, 6 level. But when days come along, for any reason where I slip into a lower number, the 1, 2s, or 3s, for me, that's a real challenge. It actually happened the other day, and that's kind of what got me thinking about this. I substitute teach high school 2 days a week, just one of my different hats I wear. And I had one of those days where I got up, I kind of felt a little bit off, was called in to teach, really didn't do a whole lot of teaching, just kind of felt listless, unmotivated, and it just was kind of a lackluster day. I guess you could say I felt in one sense like I was in the doldrums. There was no wind blowing. I had the sails up, but there was no wind blowing. And let me say, on those days, I find that I am especially vulnerable. Well, why is that? Well, one of my learned behaviors from a larger part of my life was that I have learned in the past that there is a way to spike or elevate my feelings temporarily to get me into a more energized, excited mode. Now, that isn't a trip to Starbucks. That would be in the past some version of porn. And one of the reasons why I think porn is so addictive is that it is, at least in the short term, a great mood elevator. Some of us have learned to use porn or any arousal really to pick us up when we dip down into the doldrums. It reminds me of a definition that the therapist John Bradshaw from back in the 70s, 80s, he defined addiction in this way. And listen to the way he defined it. An addiction is an unhealthy, mood-altering relationship with a substance, behavior, or a person. Now, you could say going to Starbucks is a mood-altering relationship with some mojo, right? But it's probably not going to get you in hot water. It's not unhealthy in the broadest sense. Let me say that definition again. An addiction is an unhealthy, mood-altering relationship with a substance, behavior, or a person. So, the result of that is let's say we end up reaching for some sort of arousal, illicit arousal behaviors, and it results in an emotional spike. Of course, after the emotional spike is, you got it, an emotional crash. And we go from, let's say we're at 3, we bump up to an 8, 9, whatever it is, but then we crash, and we don't just crash down to 0. You know, you'd almost say we crash into the negative or negative numbers. So, this is the way it goes. When I'm at a 2 or 3, feeling listless, bored, unmotivated, in the doldrums, I literally have to play this mental game with myself. I have to tell myself, you know, I can spike up to a 7 to 9 for a while by engaging in my favorite arousal distraction. But then it will come with a massive hangover or crash that will leave me emotionally in the negative. So I might go from 3 up to a 7 or 8, but then I'm going to crash into a -2, -3, which truly sucks. So then I tell myself, let's live with the 3 and ride it out until the number goes up. Now, I recognize that there are some guys that living in more of a lower state, a 2 or 3, is more common than not. You could say that they may struggle with depression or struggle with lower mood or whatever that is. And one of the questions I ask guys is, do you struggle with depressive episodes? I'm not even sure. Just to say, do you find yourself getting depressed at different times? Again, I don't generally, but a number of guys I work with do. And one of the things I've encouraged guys to do is to talk to their family doctor, especially if they find themselves for long periods of time at the 1, 2, or 3 level. Now, obviously, if you live on the West Coast and it's dark and rainy, then you might struggle because of the environment, because of the weather. All of that plays into a depressed mood scenario. And there's some guys that have found that medication or vitamins or different sort of strategies can even out their moods or raise their moods so that they're not feeling the pull to porn as often because of it's not an emotional need that they're intrinsically feeling. Now, occasionally, and it's not as common, but occasionally I'll run across guys that work on the other end of the spectrum where they live highly energized, excited states 7 to 9 level. And you might think, well, why don't you just leave that alone? Don't mess with a good thing. But some of those guys that are almost adrenaline guys would say, I like looking at porn. It's like a cherry on top. It's a reward. It's some of those things. So I guess in one sense you could say either ends of the emotional spectrum can be problematic, especially if you have learned to habitually pair or couple your emotional need with reaching for porn. So, what I would recommend is this: learn to read your moods. Even give them a number, especially if that helps you, for example, grow in self-awareness. Then, coach yourself. And it's helpful sometimes to even speak this out loud. You know, basically, when you speak it out loud and you say, this is where I'm at, it actually gives you and helps you come up with a more successful way of navigating those emotions. So, let me give you an example. Let's say you're having a day where you're feeling off. And you just go, you know, it's kind of one of those days. I'm feeling off. I'm feeling low. I'm going to say today I feel at a 2.5 or a 3. You know, the old Vern would look for a pick-me-up today. But if I do that, that's going to leave me just feeling horrible in the not-so-distant future. So let's ride this out. This is just a temporary feeling. What can I do for the next half hour or so to steer my way through this feeling? Another great thing that you might do is say, here's something that's always worked for me. Maybe I can check in with somebody, put something on my WhatsApp group, or I can give somebody a quick call or text. That is probably one of the most amazing ways of just helping you through that feeling of being off. You know, maybe go for a short walk, maybe do a crossword puzzle, maybe a Sudoku, maybe, I don't know what you do, but you recognize, you know what, I'm feeling off today. So check it in and then look for some other ways so that you can, in one sense, pass the time until your mood elevates on its own. So, having said that, the next time you find yourself in the doldrums, don't take your sails down, leave your sails up. The wind will return and take you to where you want to go. We'll see you next time.